I have kicked down doors in war zones where death waited behind a curtain. I thought I knew what terror was, but I was wrong. Terror isn't the sound of gunfire in a valley. Terror is standing on your own front porch in a quiet American suburb, seeing your front door slightly ajar, and hearing absolutely nothing. No laughter, no music, just the heavy, suffocating silence of a grave. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your city or country. They tell you that coming home is the best part of the job. For 15 years, I have been a U.S. Army Ranger. I have spent more time in the dirt than in my own bed. But this time was supposed to be different. I had pulled every favor I had to get my rotation ended early. My daughter, Violet, was turning 16. I wanted to be the dad who finally showed up. I didn't tell my wife, Harper. I didn't tell Violet. I wanted it to be the perfect surprise. The Uber dropped me off at the bottom of the driveway. The afternoon sun was golden. It was the kind of street where people felt safe enough to leave their garage doors open. I walked up the driveway, a grin already spreading across my face. But as I stepped onto the porch, the grin vanished. The front door was cracked open about an inch. The dad part of my brain wanted to call out, but the ranger part of my brain, the part that kept me alive, took over. It shut down my emotions and turned on my senses. I pushed the door open with 2 fingers. "Harper," I called out. My voice was low, a command. Silence. The air inside felt heavy, stale. I stepped into the foyer to the right. The living room looked normal, but then I smelled it. Copper pennies and wet rust blood. My heart hammered against my ribs. I moved faster now. I swept through the kitchen clear. I moved toward the hallway and then I saw her. "No," I whispered. "No, Violet." She was lying on the hardwood floor, curled into a fetal position. Her backpack was still on one shoulder, but she wasn't moving. I sprinted the last 10 feet and slid on my knees beside her. "Violet, baby, look at me." I turned her over gently. A wave of nausea hit me. Her face was swollen, battered, unrecognizable. Someone had beaten my little girl brutally. There was a pool of dark blood under her head. I pressed my fingers to her neck. My hands were trembling. "Focus. You are a medic. Save her." I found it, a pulse, weak. "Freddy, but there I've got you," I whispered, my voice cracking. "Daddy's here." I dialed 911, 24 Maple Drive, 16-year-old female, severe head trauma. "I need a bus now." I scanned her body. Her knuckles were bruised. She had fought back. The sirens wailed in the distance. I held her cold hand and made a promise. "If you take her, I will burn the world down." The hospital was a blur of white lights. I paced the waiting room, still wearing my blood-stained shirt. Harper arrived 20 minutes later. She looked like she had run a marathon, her mascara running. "Mason," she screamed, collapsing into my arms. "Is she okay? Tell me she's okay." "She's in surgery," I said, holding her up. "They're relieving pressure on her brain." "She's alive, Harper." "Who did this?" she wailed. "Why?" An hour later, a man in a rumpled suit approached us. "Sergeant Major Kincaid." "Yes," I said, my voice eyes cold. "I'm Detective Grant," he said, not making eye contact. "I'm handling the case. What do you know?" "Looks like a classic break-in," Grant said, flipping open a notebook. "We've had a string of them. Junkies looking for cash. Your daughter probably surprised them. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong place." I stepped closer. She was in her own home. "Detective, I get that you're upset," Grant said, closing the book, "but these guys are ghosts. They were masks. We'll do our best, but don't get your hopes up." He walked away. He had already written it off. A random crime. I looked at Harper. She was shaking. "I need to go back," I said quietly. "No, Mason, don't leave me. I have to get clothes." I lied. "And I need to clean up the house before you see it again." She nodded, tears streaming. "Okay." I wasn't going back for clothes. I knew something Detective Grant didn't. The house was dark when I returned. Police tape fluttered in the breeze. I ducked under the tape and unlocked the door. The smell of blood was still there. I walked past the spot where Violet had fallen, forcing myself not to look. Detective Grant said it was a break-in. I checked the back door. Locked. I checked the windows. Intact. No shattered glass. If they broke in, where was the break? I examined the front door lock. It was pristine. No scratches. The frame hadn't been kicked. They didn't break in. They had a key or the door was unlocked. I walked to the security panel on the wall. I punched in my master admin code. If Grant was right, the alarm should have triggered a perimeter breach. I scrolled back to 3:15 p.m. My blood ran cold. There was no breach alert. 15 hours 14 minutes and 22 seconds. System disarmed. 15 hours 14 minutes and 30 seconds. Front door opened. They didn't force their way in. They turned the alarm off first. I stared at the screen. To turn the alarm off, you needed a 4-digit PIN code. We didn't share it with anyone. I pressed details. The system displayed the user, code 2 Harper. I felt the floor drop out from under me. Code 1 was me. Code 3 was Violet. Code 2 was Harper. I checked the time again. 3:14 p.m. Harper was at work. She couldn't have been here, but someone used her code. Not a hack, not a bypass. Someone walked up to this keypad and typed in her specific numbers. This wasn't a random junkie. The people who hurt my daughter were invited. I took a photo of the screen, then deleted the log entry. I couldn't trust Detective Grant with this. I stood in the dark hallway. The enemy wasn't a stranger. The enemy was someone close. The war had followed me home, and now I was the only soldier left on the battlefield. I didn't go back to the hospital immediately. I couldn't face Harper yet, not knowing that her code, her specific code, was the one that opened the door to the monsters who hurt our daughter. The thought was a corrosive acid in my brain. I needed to know if she was a victim of identity theft, coercion, or something much darker. I went down to the basement. Behind a false panel in the utility room, obscured by boxes of holiday decorations, I had installed a secondary hardwired DVR system years ago. Harper used to tease me about my spy gear, calling it overkill for the suburbs. Right now, my paranoia was the only weapon I had left. I pulled up the footage from the living room camera. The lens was hidden inside a functional smoke detector, invisible to the naked eye. I scrubbed the timeline to 3:15 p.m. The front door opened. The alarm didn't beep. 3 men walked in. They weren't moving like junkies. Junkies are twitchy. They stumble. They look around wildly for anything shiny. These men moved in a stack, tight, controlled, efficient. They were wearing black balaclavas and tactical gloves. They checked corners. They covered each other's blind spots. The lead man signaled with 2 fingers. Silent forward. That wasn't a gang sign. That was military doctrine or police SWAT. I watched as they swept the room. They didn't grab the TV. They didn't look at the expensive silverware on the dining table. They moved with a singular purpose toward the hallway. Then the camera caught the moment Violet walked out of her bedroom, probably wondering who was home. She was wearing her pajamas, holding a glass of water. I paused the video. I closed my eyes, gripping the edge of the desk until the wood creaked under my fingers. I couldn't watch the assault. I couldn't watch my little girl be beaten by 3 grown men. I refused to let that image burn into my retinas. I skipped forward 5 minutes. The men were leaving. They were moving faster now. Urgency in their steps, but still disciplined. The last man, the driver, paused at the door to check the street. He adjusted his mask. For a split second, the sleeve of his jacket rode up. I zoomed in. The image was grainy, pixelated, but clear enough for me. A tattoo on the inner forearm, a scorpion with a cracked tail. I knew that ink. It didn't belong to a cartel or a street gang. It belonged to a local crew of low-level mercenaries, ex-military washouts, dishonorable discharges, guys who had the training, but none of the discipline. They hung out at a dive bar called The Piston on the south side of the city. I downloaded the image to my phone. I stood up. The fatigue from my flight was gone. The grief was still there, heavy and sharp, but I pushed it into a box in the back of my mind. Right now, I didn't need to be a father. I needed to be a hunter. I stopped at the hospital briefly to check on Violet. She was still in a coma, a machine breathing for her. The rhythmic whoosh click of the ventilator was the only sound in the room, a cruel metronome counting down the time I was losing. Harper was asleep in the chair next to the bed, her hand clutching Violet's limp fingers. I looked at my wife. Her face was stained with dried tears. She looked so innocent, so broken. How could her code have been used? Did someone force her? Did she write it down somewhere and lose it? I wanted to shake her awake and demand answers, but I couldn't. Not here. Not without proof. If she was involved, she would lie. If she wasn't, I would break her heart even more by accusing her. I kissed Violet's forehead, the skin cool against my lips. "I'm going to find them, baby," I whispered. "I promise." I left the room before Harper woke up. The Piston was a hole in the wall that smelled of stale beer, sawdust, and bad decisions. It was 10 p.m. on a Tuesday, and the place was half full of bikers and burnouts. I walked in. I wasn't wearing my uniform. I was wearing a dark hoodie and jeans. my hands loose at my sides, blending in with the shadows. I scanned the room, my eyes dissecting every face. I saw him almost immediately. He was sitting at a corner booth, laughing with a waitress. He was wearing a short-sleeved shirt, relaxed, arrogant. There it was, the scorpion tattoo on his left forearm. His name was Ryder. I remembered him from a briefing years ago. A dishonorable discharge from the Marines for selling night vision equipment on the black market. A thief, a thug, a disgrace to the uniform. I didn't storm over. I walked to the bar, ordered a water, and waited. Patience is the Ranger's greatest weapon. 20 minutes later, Ryder stood up and stumbled toward the back exit, probably to smoke or take a leak. I followed him out into the alleyway. The heavy steel door clicked shut behind us. The alley was dark, wet, and empty. Ryder was lighting a cigarette, his back to me. The flame of his lighter illuminated his hollow face. "You dropped something," I said. My voice was calm, conversational. Ryder turned around, squinting into the dark. "What?" "Your discipline," I said. Before he could react, I closed the distance. I didn't punch him. I kicked his knee backward with a sickening crunch, shattering his balance, and slammed his face into the brick wall. He tried to scream, but I grabbed the back of his neck and squeezed, hitting the pressure point that makes your vision go white. "Don't make a sound," I whispered into his ear, "or I will snap your neck before you can blink." Ryder wheezed, terrified. He knew exactly what kind of hands were holding him. He knew I wasn't a street fighter. He felt the training in my grip. "Who are you?" he choked out, blood dripping from his nose. "I'm the father of the girl you put in the hospital today," I said. Ryder's body went rigid. "Man, look, I didn't touch her. I was just the driver. I swear I stayed at the door. You were in the house." I tightened my grip. I saw the footage. 3 men. Who were the other 2? I don't know their names. "They were hires pros," Ryder stammered, sweat pouring down his face mixing with the blood. "I just drove, that's it." I slammed him into the wall again, harder this time. "Who hired you, Ryder? Give me a name." "I can't. He'll kill me." "He might kill you later," I said, leaning in close, my voice a low growl. "But I am here right now, and I promise you, my way will be much, much slower." I pulled a small knife from my pocket, just a tactical folder, and pressed the cold steel against his cheek. Ryder broke. "Julian." It was Julian. Julian who? I don't know his last name. They call him the broker. He runs a high-stakes poker game at the warehouse district. He sets up the jobs. He told us the house was empty. He gave us the codes. The codes? He gave you the alarm code? I asked, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. Yes, he gave us everything. Said it was an easy grab. We didn't know the girl was there, man. It was supposed to be a ghost run. I pulled back slightly. Julian the broker. Where is the game? I asked. Old textile factory. 5th floor tonight. He's there tonight. I released Ryder. He slumped to the ground, gasping for air, clutching his shattered knee. If you tell anyone I was here, I said, looking down at him like he was garbage, I will come back, and next time I won't ask questions. I turned and walked away into the night, leaving him shivering in the trash. I had a name. I had a location. Julian, the broker, the man who had my wife's alarm codes. I wasn't going to the police. Detective Grant would just file a report and lose it. I was going to that poker game, and I wasn't going to play cards. The textile district was a graveyard of brick and steel. At midnight, the factory rider had pointed out loomed against the skyline like a dark fortress. There were no lights in the windows, but I saw the telltale signs of life. Luxury cars parked in the shadows of the alley. A heavy steel door guarded by a man the size of a vending machine. This wasn't a street game. This was high level. I couldn't just kick the door down. If I went in loud, Julian, the broker, would slip out a back exit before I ever saw his face. I needed to get close. I needed to be in the room. I had stopped at home only long enough to change. I traded my hoodie for a tailored suit I had bought for a military ball years ago. I put on my Rolex, a retirement gift for my unit. I look like money. I look like a target. That was the point. I walked up to the bouncer. He crossed his massive arms, blocking the path. Private party, he grunted. I know, I said, keeping my voice bored. Ryder sent me, said the game is hot tonight. The bouncer's eyes narrowed at the name. Ryder ain't here. I know, I said, stepping into his personal space. I let the confidence of 1,000 combat missions radiate off me. He had an accident, told me to take his seat. You can let me in or you can explain to Julian why you turned away 50 grand and buy in. The bouncer hesitated. Greed weared with suspicion. Greed won. He patted me down. I hadn't brought a gun. I was the weapon. 5th floor, he muttered, stepping aside. Don't start nothing. I'm just here to play. I lied. The elevator opened directly into a sprawling loft. The air was thick with cigar smoke and the smell of expensive scotch. In the center of the room, under low-hanging industrial lights, sat a poker table surrounded by men who looked like they owned the city or stole it. I scanned the faces. I was looking for the man Ryder described. Arrogant, sharp, the kind of guy who thought he was smarter than everyone else in the room. I saw him. He was sitting at the head of the table stacking chips with manicured fingers. He wore a silk suit that probably cost more than my car. He was laughing at a joke, his teeth too white, his smile too practiced. Julian. I walked to the bar, ordered a bourbon, and watched him. I studied his movements. He was comfortable here. He felt safe. That was his mistake. After 20 minutes, Julian stood up. He whispered something to the dealer and headed toward the back of the loft toward the restrooms. I waited 5 seconds, then followed. The restroom was marble and gold, a stark contrast to the gritty exterior of the factory. Julian was washing his hands, admiring himself in the mirror. I walked in and locked the door behind me. The click of the lock was loud in the tiled room. Julian looked up in the mirror. He saw me standing there blocking the exit. He saw the way I was looking at him, not like a poker player, but like a predator. Wrong room, pal, Julian said, drawing his hands. Members only. I'm not a member, I said, walking toward him. I'm a father. Julian frowned, confused. What? I grabbed him by the lapels of his silk suit and slammed him into the marble sink. A bottle of cologne shattered on the floor. Hey, Julian shouted, trying to shove me off. He was weak, soft. Do you know who I am? I know exactly who you are, I growled, pinning him down. You're the man who sent 3 animals to my house. You're the man who gave them the code to beat my daughter half to death. Julian's eyes went wide. The arrogance evaporated, replaced by pure panic. The house. Wait, the Kincaid job. Why? I demanded, tightening my grip on his throat. Why my family? We don't have money. We don't have enemies. I didn't order the hit. Julian gasped, clawing at my hands. It wasn't supposed to be a hit. It was a retrieval, a ghost run. Retrieval of what? I slammed him again. The TV? The jewelry? No, the safe. Julian choked out. The client wanted what was in the safe. He said the house was empty. He swore the house was empty. I froze. The safe. We had a small wall safe in the master bedroom closet. We kept passports there, some emergency cash, and my mind raced. What were they looking for? I asked, my voice deadly quiet. A hard drive. Julian spilled everything. He was terrified. Just a hard drive. That's all they wanted. The client gave me the alarm codes. He gave me the layout. He said, get the drive, don't touch the family. Who is the client? I don't know, Julian cried. It was anonymous, encrypted chat. Payment through offshore crypto. I swear to God. I released him, letting him slide to the floor. He coughed, massaging his throat. A hard drive, I repeated. I remembered. Years ago, I had inadvertently uncovered a massive defense contract fraud during a deployment. I had copied the files to a drive as insurance, just in case they tried to scapegoat my unit. I had hidden that drive in the safe and forgotten about it. Only 2 people knew that drive existed. Me and Harper. The realization hit me harder than a bullet. The client gave you the alarm codes, I said, staring at Julian. Yes, specifically code 2. He said it wouldn't trigger a notification. Code 2. Harper's code. The client knew about the drive. The client knew Harper's code. The client knew the layout of my bedroom. Get out of here, I whispered to Julian. What? Leave the city, I said, turning my back on him. If I see you again, I will finish this. I walked out of the bathroom, leaving Julian trembling on the floor. I didn't care about the poker game anymore. I didn't care about the mercenaries. This wasn't about robbery. This was about secrets. I needed to get to that safe. I needed to see if the drive was gone. And then I needed to have a very long, very painful conversation with my wife. The drive back to my house was a blur. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. The city lights streaked like comets, but I didn't see them. All I could see was Julian's terrified face. The client gave me the alarm codes, specifically code 2. Code 2, Harper. It didn't make sense. Harper was my rock. She was the woman who waited for me through 4 deployments, who raised Violet alone while I was hunting bad guys in the desert. She was a kindergarten teacher, for God's sake. She didn't know criminals, she didn't know brokers or mercenaries, but the facts were stacking up like bricks in a wall I couldn't climb over. I pulled into the driveway. The house was dark, silent. It looked like a tomb. I unlocked the front door and disarmed the alarm. Using my code this time, the silence inside was oppressive. It felt like the house itself was holding its breath. I went straight to the master bedroom. I didn't turn on the lights. I used the tactical flashlight on my keychain, keeping the beam low. I walked into the walk-in closet. I pushed aside my dress uniforms and Harper's winter coats to reveal the small wall safe mounted at eye level. It was locked. I spun the dial, left to 10, right to 24, left to 08. Our anniversary. The latch clicked. I swung the heavy steel door open. My heart stopped. The passports were there. The emergency cash, about $2,000 in hundreds, was there. My grandfather's pocket watch was there, but the black velvet pouch that held the external hard drive gone. I felt around the inside of the safe, desperate, hoping it had fallen behind a stack of papers. Nothing, just cold steel. I sat down heavily on the floor of the closet, the flashlight beam hitting the empty space on the shelf. They hadn't taken the cash. They hadn't taken the watch. They came for the drive. The drive contained evidence of a defense contractor, Aegis Global, skimming millions off military supply chains. I had kept it as leverage, a break glass in case of emergency, insurance policy if my unit ever got blamed for the missing equipment. I had never told anyone about it except Harper. I told her, if anything ever happens to me, give this to the JAG office. She knew where it was. She knew what it was worth. And now it was gone. And Violet was in a coma because of it. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a text from Harper. "Mason, where are you? The doctors are doing another scan. Please come back, I'm scared." I stared at the screen. Was she scared for Violet, or was she scared of me finding out? I stood up. I couldn't go back to the hospital yet. I needed one more piece of the puzzle. I went to Harper's bedside table. I opened the drawer. Hand lotion, a book she was reading glasses. I dug deeper under the lining of the drawer. My fingers brushed against something hard and cold. I pulled it out. It was a burner phone, a cheap prepaid flip phone. Why would my wife need a burner phone? I flipped it open. The battery was low, but it turned on. There were no contacts saved, just a list of text messages from a single number. I opened the thread. "Harper, he's coming home early. The surprise ruined the timeline. You have to wait. Unknown. We can't wait. The buyer is impatient. Get us the access tonight. Harper, Violet will be home. It's too risky. Unknown. Send her to a friend's. Give us the code, Harper, or we tell Mason about Felix." I dropped the phone on the bed as if it were burning hot. Or we tell Mason about Felix. Who was Felix? The name sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it. A friend? A colleague? I scrolled up. "Harper, please, Felix is innocent. Just give me more time to pay. Unknown. The drive covers the debt, all of it. Give us the drive, and Felix walks free. Don't, and we destroy him." My knees gave out. I sat on the edge of the bed, the room spinning. This wasn't just about money. This was blackmail. Harper had given them the code. She had traded the drive to protect this Felix. She tried to warn them about Violet, but she gave them the access anyway. She made a deal with devils, thinking she could control the outcome. She was wrong. I looked at the wedding photo on the nightstand. Us 10 years ago, happy, clueless. She had betrayed me. She had betrayed my trust, my oath, and worst of all, she had gambled with our daughter's safety. But who was Felix? And then it hit me. I stood up and walked to the living room, grabbing a framed photo from the mantel. It was a picture from a family reunion 5 years ago, me, Harper, Violet, and standing next to Harper, his arm casually draped around her shoulder, was my younger brother Felix. My brother, the screw-up, the gambler, the one who always owed money to the wrong people. The pieces slammed together. Felix was in debt. Harper was trying to save him. They used my secrets to pay his bill. I wasn't just fighting criminals. I was fighting my own family. I grabbed the burner phone and shoved it into my pocket. I grabbed my car keys. I wasn't going back to the hospital. Not yet. I was going to pay my brother a visit. Felix lived in an apartment complex that had seen better days about 20 years ago. The kind of place where the hallways smelled like boiled cabbage and stale smoke. And the security buzzer at the front door was just a bundle of exposed wires. It was 2 a.m. Most people were asleep. I wasn't most people. I didn't buzz. I waited for a tenant to leave, caught the door before it latched, and slipped inside. I took the stairs 2 at a time, my boots silent on the worn carpet. apartment 4B. I stood outside the door for a moment, listening. I could hear the faint sound of a TV. He was awake. I didn't knock. I stepped back, raised my leg, and drove my heel into the lock plate. The door splintered inward with a deafening crash. I was inside before the wood hit the floor. Felix was on the couch, surrounded by pizza boxes and beer cans. He scrambled up, eyes wide, looking like a deer in headlights. He wasn't a fighter. He was a soft, frantic mess. "Mason," he shrieked, backing away until he hit the wall. "Jesus, Mason, you scared the hell out of me." "Sit down," I said. My voice was calm, too calm. "What are you doing here?" "I heard about Violet. It's terrible. I was going to come to the hospital tomorrow," I said. "Sit down." He collapsed back onto the couch, his hands shaking. "Mason, what's going on? You look crazy." I pulled the burner phone from my pocket and tossed it onto the coffee table. It landed with a heavy thud next to a half-empty beer. "Recognize that?" I asked. Felix looked at the phone. He didn't touch it, but his face went pale, the color draining away instantly. He knew. I don't know what that is," he stammered, his eyes darting to the door. "Don't lie to me, Felix," I said, stepping closer. "I read the texts. I know about the debt. I know about the deal. You and Harper, you traded my hard drive to pay off your gambling debts. It wasn't like that." Felix yelled desperate. "I didn't have a choice, Mason. They were going to kill me. I owed 50 grand to the Sharks. They said they'd cut my fingers off." "So, you gave them my house?" I roared, the rage finally breaking through. "You gave them my daughter?" "No." Felix was crying now, pathetic tears streaming down his face. "Harper said the house would be empty. We didn't know Violet was home early. It was supposed to be a clean swap. They get the drive, I get my life back." I grabbed him by the shirt and hauled them up. "You call this a life? You traded your niece's safety for your own skin." "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry," he sobbed. "Harper didn't want to do it. I begged her. I told her it was the only way. She did it to save me. Mason, she loves you. She couldn't let them kill me." I shoved him back onto the couch. He curled into a ball, weeping. My own brother, my own wife. They had conspired behind my back. They had turned my home into a transaction. "Who are they, Felix?" I asked, looming over him. "Who holds the debt?" Felix sniffled, wiping his nose on his sleeve. "I don't know the boss. I only deal with the collector. A guy named Dominic. He runs the salvage yard on the east side." "Dominic?" I repeated the name, filing it away. "Mason, please," Felix pleaded. "Don't kill me. I'm your brother." I looked at him. I saw the fear, the weakness, the total lack of honor. He wasn't my brother, not anymore. He was just another target. "I'm not going to kill you, Felix," I said, turning toward the door. "That would be too easy. You're going to sit here. You're not going to call Harper. You're not going to call the cops. If you leave this apartment, I will find you. And next time, I won't be talking." I walked to the door, stepping over the shattered frame. "Where are you going?" Felix called out, his voice trembling. I didn't look back. "To the salvage yard." I walked out into the cold night air. The betrayal tasted like ash in my mouth. Harper had done it to save him. She had chosen his life over our security. She had made a choice. Now, I had to make mine. I was going to find Dominic. I was going to find that hard drive, and I was going to remind everyone involved that you do not touch a ranger's family without paying a price in blood. The salvage yard on the east side was a sprawling wasteland of rusted metal and crushed dreams. Stacks of cars towered into the night sky like jagged skeletons, casting long, twisted shadows under the floodlights. It was a place where things went to disappear. I parked my car 3 blocks away and approached on foot. The perimeter was fenced with chain link and razor wire, but I found a gap near a drainage ditch that looked used. I slipped through, mud slicking my boots. The yard was quiet except for the distant barking of a guard dog. In the center of the maze of crushed cars sat a corrugated metal office building. Light spilled from the windows. That was the target, Dominic. I moved through the rows of cars, using the shadows as cover. My movement was fluid, silent. I wasn't Mason Kincaid, the suburban dad anymore. I was a ghost. I reached the side of the office building. I could hear voices inside, laughter, the clinking of bottles. I peeked through a grime-covered window. 3 men. One was sitting behind a desk, feet up, cleaning a heavy silver pistol. He was big, bald, with a thick neck and a scar running down his cheek. That had to be Dominic. The other 2 were playing cards on a crate, assault rifles leaning against the wall nearby. This wasn't a collection agency. This was a fortress. I checked my equipment. I had no gun. I had a knife, my training, and a rage that felt like a nuclear reactor in my chest. I picked up a rusty alternator from the ground. Heavy, solid. I walked to the front door and kicked it hard thud. Then I moved, sprinting to the shadows on the left side of the door. Go check it, I heard Dominic's voice growl. The door opened. One of the card players stepped out, rifle raised. Hello? Who's there? He stepped past me. I struck. I swung the alternator into the back of his knee. He collapsed with a scream. Before he hit the ground, I grabbed his hair and slammed his head into the door frame. He went limp. I grabbed his rifle, an AK-47 variant, and spun into the doorway. The second card player was scrambling for his weapon, too slow. I put 2 rounds into the floor at his feet. Bang, bang. The sound was deafening in the small metal room. Freeze. I wared. Hands now. The second man froze, hands shooting up. Dominic didn't move. He just stared at me, his hand inching toward the silver pistol on the desk. Don't do it, I said, aiming the rifle directly at his chest. I've been killing men like you for 15 years. You won't clear the holster. Dominic smiled. It was a cold, shark-like smile. He slowly moved his hand away from the gun and raised it. You've got moves, soldier, Dominic said, his voice growly. Who sent you? The Italians? The cartel. I'm here for the drive, I said, stepping into the room. I kicked the door shut behind me. The one you blackmailed my wife for. Dominic's smile widened. The Ranger, Felix's big brother. I heard you were tough. Didn't know you were stupid. Where is it? I asked, keeping the barrel steady. It's gone, hero. Dominic laughed. I don't keep heat like that. I'm just a middleman. I collected the dead. I passed the package up the chain. Up the chain to who? You don't want to know? Dominic said, leaning back. These aren't street thugs. These are the guys who own the street. You're playing a game you can't win. I'm not playing, I said. I shot the radio on the desk, shattering it. Dominic flinched. Name? I demanded. You think I'm scared of a bullet? Dominic sneered. No, I said, lowering the rifle slightly. I think you're scared of pain. I stepped forward and smashed the butt of the rifle into his nose. Blood sprayed across the desk. Dominic howled, clutching his face. The next one takes your knee, I said calmly. Then your elbow. Then your other knee. Give me the name. Dominic spat blood onto the floor. He looked at me with hate, but I saw the fear creeping into his eyes. He realized I wasn't bluffing. Vance, he choked out. The buyer is Vance. He works for Aegis Global, the contractor. Aegis Global, the company I had investigated. The company whose fraud was on that drive. Where is the exchange happening tonight? Dominic wheezed. The Railard Sector 4. They're moving it out of the city at 4 a.m. Vance is personally overseeing it. I checked my watch. 3:15 a.m. I had 45 minutes. I looked at the second man who was still trembling with his hands up. Tie him up, I ordered, pointing at Dominic. Then tie yourself up. If I see either of you follow me, I'll turn this yard into a cemetery. I backed out of the office, the rifle still raised. I had the name, I had the location. The circle was closing. My wife betrayed me to save my brother. My brother betrayed me to save himself. Dominic was just a pawn. The real enemy was Vance, the suit, the corporate fixer who was willing to destroy my family to cover up stolen millions. I dropped the rifle in a dumpster on my way out. I didn't need it. I was going to the Railard and I was going to finish this. The Railard was a desolate grid of steel tracks and shipping containers, bathed in the sickly orange glow of sodium floodlights. It was 3:45 a.m. The air was cold and smelled of diesel and ozone. I moved through the shadows, keeping low. Sector 4 was near the loading docks where the freight trains idled like sleeping iron beasts. I spotted them. 3 black SUVs were parked in a semicircle near a boxcar. Men in dark suits stood guard, scanning the perimeter. They weren't holding handguns. They held suppressed MP5 submachine guns. These were professionals, Aegis Global Security mercenaries with corporate paychecks. In the center of the group, standing by the open trunk of a sedan, was a man in a tan trench coat. He was holding a tablet, the blue light illuminating his sharp, angular face. Vance. He looked impatient, checking his watch. He was waiting for the train to depart. I didn't have a weapon. I had left the AK-47 behind because a rifle in a Railard draws too much attention before you're ready. I had my knife. I had the element of surprise, and I had the terrain. I climbed up the ladder of a nearby shipping container, moving silently across the corrugated metal roof. I was now directly above them, looking down into the center of their formation. Vance was speaking to one of the guards. "Is the drive secured?" Vance asked. "Yes, sir. It's in the case. Train leaves in 10 minutes. "Good. Once it's gone, tie up the loose ends. The brother, the wife. Make it look like a domestic dispute." My blood froze. They weren't just taking the drive. They were going to kill Felix and Harper. I didn't think. I reacted. I spotted a heavy chain hanging from a crane hook above the container. I grabbed it, tested the weight, and swung. I dropped from the sky like a hammer of God. I landed directly on the guard standing closest to Vance. The impact crumpled him instantly. I rolled, grabbed his fallen MP5, and came up firing. Foot, 3 controlled bursts. 3 guards went down before they even knew I was there. "Contact!" Vance screamed, diving behind the SUV. The remaining 2 guards opened fire. Bullets sparked against the container behind me. I dove under the chassis of the sedan, crawling to the other side. I shot the ankles of the guard on the left. He went down screaming. I popped up and neutralized the guard on the right with a shot to the shoulder. It was over in 6 seconds. Violence of action, speed, aggression. I walked around the SUV. The MP5 raised. Vance was on the ground, scrambling backward in the dirt, clutching a silver briefcase to his chest. He looked terrified. He was a man who ordered death from a desk, not one who faced it in the mud. "Stay back," Vance yelled, his voice cracking. "I'll pay you whatever you want. 5,000,010. I kicked the briefcase out of his hands. It slid across the gravel. "You think this is about money?" I asked, aiming the weapon at his head. "You're conceited," Vance whispered, realizing who I was. "The Ranger. You ordered my family dead," I said. "You beat my daughter." "I didn't touch her," Vance stammered. "That was the hirelings. I just wanted the drive. Your wife, she made the deal. She gave us the access. And you were going to kill her anyway," I said. Vance swallowed hard. "It's just business, Kincaid. Loose ends. You understand? You're a soldier. I am a soldier," I said, lowering the gun slightly. "Which means I have a code. You don't." I didn't shoot him. That would be too quick. I clubbed him across the temple with the barrel of the gun. He slumped into unconsciousness. I walked over to the silver briefcase. I popped the latches. There it was, the black velvet pouch. Inside the hard drive, the evidence. I pocketed the drive. I looked down at Vance. He would wake up in a jail cell. I pulled out his phone and dialed 911. "Shots fired at the railyard. Sector 4, multiple casualties. Send the police and tell them to bring the FBI." I dropped the phone on his chest. I had to drive. I had stopped the hit, but the war wasn't over. The hardest part was still waiting for me at home. I had to face Harper. I had to look into the eyes of the woman I loved and ask her why she had sold our lives. I walked away into the darkness as the sirens began to wail in the distance. The sun was just beginning to bleed over the horizon, painting the sky in bruises of purple and red when I pulled into my driveway. The house looked peaceful in the dawn light. The dew on the grass sparkled like diamonds. It was a perfect idyllic American picture, but I knew the rod inside. I didn't storm in. I didn't kick down the door. I walked in quietly, carrying the weight of the night on my shoulders. I was exhausted. My body ached from the fight at the railyard. My knuckles were raw and my soul felt heavy, but I had the drive in my pocket and I had the truth. I walked into the kitchen. Harper was sitting at the table. She was still wearing the clothes from yesterday. A cup of coffee sat in front of her, cold and untouched. She looked up when I entered, her eyes red-rimmed and hollow. "Mason," she whispered, "where have you been? You've been gone all night." I was so worried. I didn't answer. I pulled the chair out and sat opposite her. The scrape of the wood against the tile was the only sound in the room. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the black velvet pouch. I placed it gently on the table between us. Harper stared at it. Her breath hitched. Her hand flew to her mouth, stifling a sob. She knew. "Mason," she choked out. "I can explain." "Explain," I said. My voice was dead. No anger, no volume, just empty. "Explain why I had to fight my way through a railyard to get this back. Explain why 3 mercenaries walked into our house using your alarm code. Explain why our daughter is in a coma." She started to cry, ugly, racking sobs that shook her entire body. I didn't know they would hurt her. "I swear on my life, Mason, it was supposed to be clean." "Clean?" I repeated the word like it was poison. "You gave criminals the keys to our home, Harper, to our sanctuary." "It was for Felix," she cried. They were going to kill him. Mason, he called me screaming. They sent him photos. Photos of him tied up with a gun to his head. They said if I didn't give them the drive, they would execute him and mail me the pieces. I stared at her. So, you chose him over us? Over Violet? No. She shook her head violently. I thought the house would be empty. Violet had practice. You were in Germany. I thought they would just come in, take the drive, and leave. I was trying to save your brother without you ever knowing. You should have told me, I said quietly. I would have handled it. I would have protected him. I was scared, she whispered. Felix said if I told you, you'd turn him in. Or worse, you'd get yourself killed trying to fight them. I was trying to protect everyone, and look how that turned out, I said, gesturing to the empty house. Violet is fighting for her life. I almost died tonight. Felix is a coward hiding in his apartment. She reached across the table trying to take my hand. I pulled away. The rejection hit her like a slap. Mason, please, she begged. I love you. I love our family. I made a mistake. A horrible, terrible mistake. But I did it out of love. Love isn't selling our secrets to the enemy, I said. That's treason. I stood up. I couldn't look at her anymore. The woman I had trusted with my life, with my secrets, with my heart. She was a stranger. Pack a bag, I said. What? She looked terrified. Pack a bag, Harper. You're not staying here. Not while Violet is in that hospital. Mason, please don't kick me out. This is my home. Not anymore. I said, my voice finally rising, cracking with the pain I was holding back. You broke this home. You let the wolves in. I can't look at you without seeing Violet on that floor. Before she could answer, the front door burst open. I spun around, instinctively, reaching for a weapon I didn't have. Felix stood in the doorway. He looked disheveled while dyed. He was holding a pistol, a cheap Saturday night special that shook in his hand. Felix Harper gasped. What are you doing? I can't let you do it, Mason. Felix said, his voice trembling. He pointed the gun at me. I can't let you turn the drive in. I looked at my brother, the man I had defended on the playground, the man I had loaned money to, the man I had tried to save 1,000 times. Put the gun down, Felix, I said calmly. You don't want to do this. I have to, Felix shouted, tears streaming down his face. Vance called me. He said, if the drive goes to the FBI, he's going down and he's taking me with him. I'll go to prison for life, Mason, for conspiracy, for fraud. You should have thought about that before you gambled away 50 grand, I said, stepping toward him. Stay back, Felix screamed, cocking the hammer. I mean it. Give me the drive. Felix, stop, Harper yelled, standing up. Are you crazy? He's your brother. He doesn't care about me. Felix spat. He's the perfect hero, the ranger. He looks down on me. He always has. Look at him judging me right now. I don't judge you, Felix, I said softly. I pity you. Shut up, Felix. Wave the gun. Give me the drive. I'll destroy it. Then we're all safe. No one goes to jail. And what about Violet? I asked. Does she get justice, or do we just forget that she might never wake up? It was an accident. Felix yelled. Collateral damage. I saw red. The world narrowed down to the barrel of that gun and the man holding it. Collateral damage, I whispered. I moved. It wasn't a decision. It was instinct. Felix fired. Bang. The bullet tore through the sleeve of my shirt, grazing my arm. It burned like a hot poker, but it didn't slow me down. I closed the distance in 2 strides. I grabbed the barrel of the gun, pushing it away from Harper, and drove my palm into Felix's nose. Crunch, he screamed, and dropped the gun. I didn't stop. I spun him around and slammed him face first onto the kitchen island. I pinned his arm behind his back, twisting it until he shrieked in pain. Mason, don't kill him, Harper screamed, grabbing my arm. I looked down at my brother. He was sobbing into the granite countertop, defeated, broken, pathetic. I wanted to snap his arm. I wanted to crush his windpipe. He had shot at me. He had called my daughter collateral damage, but I looked at Harper. She was terrified, not for herself, but for me. She didn't want me to become a murderer in my own kitchen. I took a deep breath. I released the pressure slightly, but kept him pinned. I'm not going to kill you, Felix, I said, my voice shaking with adrenaline, because death is too easy for you. I pulled out my phone with my free hand. Who are you calling? Harper asked, trembling. Detective Grant, I said, and the FBI. Mason, no. Felix wailed. Please, I'm your brother. You were my brother, I said coldly. Now you're just the man who helped destroy my family. I dialed the number. "This is Sergeant Major Mason Consincade," I said when the dispatcher answered. "I have a suspect in custody at 24 Maple Drive. Attempted murder, conspiracy, and federal fraud." I hung up. I looked at Harper. She was slumped against the refrigerator, weeping silently. "It's over," I said. But as I stood there holding my brother down, listening to the approaching sirens, I knew it wasn't true. The fight was over. The criminals were caught. But my family was dead. It had died the moment Harper typed that code. It had died the moment Felix made that bet. And all the medals, all the training, all the strength in the world couldn't bring it back. I waited for the police, standing in the ruins of my life, a hero with nothing left to save. The sirens grew louder, building from a distant wail to a full-body vibration in my chest. I still had Felix pinned to the kitchen island, his cheek pressed against the cold granite, my forearm locked against his spine. Harper stood a few feet away, back against the fridge, hands shaking, eyes overflowing with a mix of guilt and terror. Blue and red light flashed across the front windows. "It's going to be okay," Harper whispered like she was trying to convince herself more than me. "No," I said quietly. "It's going to be honest. That's not the same thing." Tires screeched outside. Car doors slammed. Heavy boots pounded up the walkway, hands where they can see them. I told Felix, "If you move, they'll put you in a body bag." He let out a broken sob, but he stopped struggling. The front door burst open. "Police, don't move." 3 uniforms flooded into the foyer, guns raised, and behind them, stepping in with the slow confidence of a man who thought he owned the room, was Detective Grant. Of course, he took in the scene in one sharp glance, me pinning Felix. Harper pressed against the fridge, the broken front door frame from Felix's entrance, the pistol on the floor. "Sergeant Major Kincaid," Grant said, voice cool. "You mind telling me what the hell is going on in here?" "I've got your attempted murderer," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Felix Kincaid pulled a gun on me, confessed to working with Vance and a loan shark named Dominic. He helped set up the burglary that put my daughter in the ICU." Felix whimpered. "He's twisting it, man." I was scared. "Shut up," Grant snapped, eyes never leaving mine. "Officers, secure the weapon." One of the uniforms bagged the pistol. Another moved toward me. "Let him go, sir," the officer said. "We'll take it from here." I looked at Grant. Something in his expression was off. Too calm, too controlled. No surprise at the names I had just dropped. Vance, Dominic, Aegis Global. "I'll release him," I said slowly, "when I know I'm not handing him back to the same system that tried to bury this from day one." Grant's jaw tightened. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," I said, "I just spent the night at a salvage yard and a rail yard cleaning up the mess you called junkies looking for a TV. Vance is unconscious with his goons at Sector 4. The FBI should be there any minute. He had the drive. The same drive Aegis Global paid your friends to retrieve." For the first time, a flicker of real emotion flashed in Grant's eyes. Not surprise. Annoyance. "You went to the railard," he repeated slowly. "And you called it in from Vance's phone," I said. "And on the way here, I sent a copy of the drive to an old JAG contact in DC. Whatever was on there, it's not just mine anymore." It was only half a bluff. On the drive back from the railard, I had parked under a highway overpass, tethered my phone to the hard drive, and uploaded the contents to a secure military cloud folder, a backdoor account some of us Rangers kept for worst-case scenarios. If anyone killed me now, the truth would still leak. Grant's eyes went cold. The uniforms in my kitchen were still tense, guns lowered, waiting for orders. Harper was frozen, realizing what I had just implied. Felix was shaking under my arm. Grant took one step closer, then another. "Officers," he said without looking at them, "take Mrs. Kincaid into the living room. Keep her there." "Wait, what?" Harper's voice cracked. "Why, ma'am, please," one of the younger cops said gently, guiding her out. She went, stumbling, eyes wide. Now it was just me, Felix, 2 uniforms, and Grant in the kitchen. Grant's tone shifted, less professional, more personal. "You know what your problem is, Mason?" he asked, loosening his tie. "You still think this is a war you can win by being the good guy?" "My problem," I said, easing my grip on Felix just enough to be ready if I had to move, "is that I trusted you to do your job." Grant laughed once. It was humorless, sharp. My job is to go home alive, to retire with a pension, not to go toe-to-toe with billion-dollar defense contractors because some ranger can't keep his nose out of classified fraud." The words hit harder than a punch. "You were in on it," I said. He shrugged. In on what? I see a messy domestic washed-up brother in debt, desperate wife, absent hero dad with dirt on the wrong people, house gets hit, drive walks away, everyone gets paid, case gets closed. Simple. She tried to warn you. I said Harper told you something didn't feel like a random break-in. Yeah, Grant said, licking his teeth. And I told her to trust the system. He looked at the two officers. Take Felix into custody, Grant said. Charges: assault with a deadly weapon, attempted homicide. Get him in the car. The uniforms moved. I released Felix and they snapped cuffs on him. He went without a fight, whimpering. Grant watched them leave. The moment the last officer crossed the threshold, he closed the kitchen door behind them. We were alone. You should have left it alone, Mason, he said quietly. You were supposed to just be a grieving dad. Cry for the cameras. Hold your wife's hand at the vigil. Then go back to your base and point a gun at whoever your government tells you to. You ordered them to finish the loose ends. I said, remembering Vance's words at the railard. You were going to let them kill Harper too. Grant tilted his head. She made her bed. She thought playing ball with sharks was easier than coming clean to her war hero husband. He took a step closer and I saw it, the weight on his right hip, his hand hovering near his holster. Where's the original drive, Mason? He asked. In a place you can't touch, I said. He smiled faintly. You sure about that? My phone buzzed on the counter. I didn't look at it, but out of the corner of my eye, I saw the notification. Unknown number, new voicemail. Probably the FBI or JAG or both. See, here's how this goes, Grant said. You hand me whatever you pulled from Vance. I write this up as a family dispute that got out of hand. Brother arrested, wife cooperates. Ranger loses his temper, but hey, understandable. And if I don't, Grant sighed like I had disappointed him. Then I put you on that floor. I put a gun in your hand. I say you snapped. PTSD happens all the time. Brave soldier couldn't handle the betrayal. Killed his brother. Turned the gun on himself. Tragic. Clean. He unbuttoned his jacket, revealing his service pistol in full. He was serious. Don't do this, I said. You're not thinking straight. Oh, I'm thinking clearer than you are, he replied. You've got a daughter in a coma, and a career hanging by a thread. You really want her waking up to see her dad on the news as the guy who murdered his own family. For a split second, I saw it. The headline, the photo, my name buried under a lie. I thought of Violet, the way she used to wait on the porch with a handmade sign every time I came back from deployment. The way she always asked, "Did you protect the good guys this time, Dad?" I met Grant's eyes. You point that gun at me, I said, and every ranger I've ever served with will crawl out of whatever hole you try to bury this in. You might kill me, but you won't kill the story. Grant's jaw clenched. His hand dropped to his pistol. He started to draw. Police, drop your weapon. The shout came from the hallway, sharp and authoritative, a different voice, not one of the uniforms who had been inside earlier. Grant froze, half draw. Boots thundered behind him. The kitchen door flew open. A woman in a dark suit stepped in first, FBI badge hanging from a lanyard around her neck. Sidearm already trained on Grant. Behind her, two more agents and one of the younger local officers I'd seen earlier, his face pale but determined. Detective Grant, the agent said, voice like ice, hands away from the weapon. Now for a heartbeat, the room held its breath. Grant's eyes flicked to me, then to the agent, then to the doorway. He let go of the pistol, slowly raised his hands. This is a mistake, he began. You don't know what you're walking into. This man, we know exactly what we're walking into. The agent cut him off. We just pulled Vance out of a railard surrounded by his dead security detail and a phone with a 911 call traced right back here. We have emails. We have bank transfers. We have a very detailed audio file a certain sergeant major uploaded to a secure military server. Her eyes met mine briefly. There was a flicker of respect there. Grant Avery, she continued, you're under arrest for obstruction of justice, conspiracy, and participating in a criminal enterprise. Turn around, hands behind your back. The younger officer stepped forward, cuffs ready. His hands were shaking. Don't do this, kid, Grant said quietly. Think about your career. I am, the officer replied, voice tight. Turn around, detective. Grant did. The cuffs clicked shut around his wrists. As they let him out, Grant twisted his head just enough to look back at me. This isn't over, he said. For you? I answered. It is, he smirked, but there was fear behind it now. When they were gone, the kitchen felt bigger, empty. The agent holstered her weapon and exhaled. Sergeant Major Kincaid? she asked. Yeah, I'm Agent Quinn, she said. FBI. We'll need a full statement, but not right now. She glanced toward the living room where voices and muffled crying filtered in. You should get to the hospital, she said softly. The doctors called your phone because they couldn't reach you. Your daughter, she made it through the night. They're reducing her sedation. There's a chance she might wake up. For the first time in what felt like years, something other than rage and grief cracked through my chest. Hope. I nodded once. You'll take care of Harper and Felix. We'll let the courts sort out their charges, Quinn said. But the truth, that's safe now. I picked up the velvet pouch from the table, waited in my palm for a moment, then handed it to her. Make sure it stays that way, I said. She took it. We will. As I stepped out of the ruined house, the sunrise was higher, spilling light over the quiet street. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, trying to piece together their own version of what had happened. They would never know the full story, but Violet would. If she woke up, I would tell her everything. Not to scare her, but so she would understand one thing. Monsters don't just live in caves and war zones. Sometimes they live in your own house, and sometimes the only way to beat them is to tell the truth. I got in my car and drove toward the hospital, my hands still shaking, my heart pounding with a new kind of fear. Not fear of bullets, not fear of betrayal, fear of hope, because hope meant I still had something left to lose. The sound of a judge's gavel hitting what is final. It sounds like a gunshot, but without the echo. I sat in the back row of the courtroom, my hands folded in my lap, watching the end of my former life. Felix stood at the defendant's table, his shoulders slumped, weeping quietly as the sentence was read. 15 years, conspiracy, fraud, attempted murder. He didn't look back at me. He couldn't. The brother I knew had died a long time ago. That figure in the orange jumpsuit was just a stranger now. Then came Harper's turn. She rose to her feet, looking thin and pale, almost like a shadow of the woman she used to be. Her attorney had pushed for a lighter sentence, citing coercion, pressure, and the fact that she had no prior record, but none of it swayed the judge. You don't hand your house keys over to violent criminals and then claim you're innocent when your own child ends up in a coma, the judge said flatly. 5 years for child endangerment and acting as an accessory to felony burglary. Harper didn't break down. She simply nodded, almost as though she'd already braced herself for it. As the bailiff stepped forward to cuff her, she turned around, her eyes searching the courtroom until they landed on me. Silently, she mouthed 2 words. I'm sorry. I didn't nod back. I didn't offer a smile. I just looked at her one final time and felt whatever thread had still connected us finally break for good. I didn't hate her anymore. Hatred takes too much energy to hold on to. I simply felt nothing at all. She belonged to the past now, and my focus needed to be on what came next. I got up and left the courtroom before they even led her away. There was somewhere far more important I needed to be. Outside, the seasons had shifted completely. The trees that had been green the day I first came home were now blazing gold and crimson with autumn. The air felt crisp, carrying that unmistakable scent of change. I made my way into the rehabilitation center, a place that felt calm and quiet, nothing like the chaos of the past several months. Walking down the corridor, I reached room 304. Violet sat by the window in her wheelchair, watching the leaves drift down outside. The swelling on her face had completely healed, leaving behind only faint silver-toned scars near her hairline. Her left arm remained in a brace, and her speech was still a little slow, but her mind hadn't lost an ounce of its sharpness. She was still my fighter. Hey, Dad, she said, turning toward me as I walked in. Hey, kiddo, I smiled, setting my bag down on the chair. Ready to get out of here? Today was her discharge day. I had already sold our house on Maple Drive, unable to bear living there any longer, too many painful memories lingering in the hallways, too much blood soaked into the floorboards. Using my pension and savings, I'd bought a small cabin 3 hours north, tucked beside a lake. No security systems, no neighbors hiding secrets, just trees, water, and quiet. Did you go? Violet asked softly. She already knew where I'd spent my morning. Yeah, I said. Is it finally over? I knelt down beside her wheelchair and took her good hand in mine. It felt warm, full of life. It's over, I told her. They can never hurt us again. Not any of them. She studied my face carefully, her blue eyes taking in the new streaks of gray in my beard, the lines around my eyes that hadn't been there before all of this began. You look tired, Dad, she whispered. I am, I admitted honestly. But I'm finally resting now. I'm finished fighting wars. Violet. The only job left for me now is being your father. She squeezed my hand gently. You were always my dad, she said. Even when you weren't here. My throat tightened painfully. I stood up and moved behind her chair. Let's go home, I said. The drive north passed in comfortable quiet, just the radio playing softly as the city disappeared behind us in the rearview mirror. Skyscrapers gave way to suburbs, and suburbs slowly gave way to forest. We arrived at the cabin right as the sun began to set, a simple structure of wood and stone with a porch that looked out over the water. It wasn't built like a fortress, it was simply a home. I helped Violet settle onto the porch, and we sat together in the rocking chairs, wrapped in blankets, sipping hot cocoa as the lake reflected the orange glow of the sky like a sheet of glass. For the first time in 15 years, I didn't feel the urge to check my surroundings or scan for exits. I looked over at my daughter. She carried scars now, just as I did, but scars simply prove that you lived through something, proof that whatever tried to break you didn't succeed. Dad, Violet asked, breaking the silence. Yeah? Do you think we can actually be happy here? I gazed out at the water for a moment before turning back to her. Happiness was never about a place, Vi, I said gently. It's about who you're with. As long as I have you, I'm already happy. She gave me a smile then, one that was completely real, and reached all the way to her eyes. Me too, she said. I settled back into my chair, closing my eyes and letting the sound of wind through the trees wash over me. The betrayal, the anger, the violence, all of it finally felt like it belonged to the past, drifting away like smoke into the sky. I wasn't Sergeant Major Kincaid anymore. I wasn't the Avenger or the hunter people had come to fear. I was simply Mason, and for the first time in my entire life, that felt like more than enough.